Good morning, everyone. First of all, I'd like to welcome everyone, and especially today, for today is International Women's Day. The theme is Choose to Challenge. And one of the reasons why we've decided to do this, NATSWA and the University of Queensland School of Public Health, is that we want to showcase our women who we work with on the ground, because it's them who continue to choose to make the challenges. We want to raise their voices. Also, we want to make people aware and to give people aware the support that they need in raising their voices. I'd like to acknowledge the land we are on, and I'd also like to acknowledge the land that all of those who are on this webinar, where they are. I'd also like to pay respects to our elders past and present, and I'd also like to acknowledge all the women around the world, and especially those who support us, because it is them who are passing on and walking with us their wisdom and their knowledge to help us on our journey of life, so that as women we can make the world a better place, as well as we have to remember we are the nurturers of the world. We are also the life givers. So thank you very much for all who are on here, and thank you for our panelists. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your voices so that everybody can listen to what your Choose the Challenge is. I'd like to welcome, first of all, to one of our panelists, Christine. Christine is going to do the Welcome to Country. Thank you, Christine.
Right. Marinya arko dajma balanja namno nan ikar don bari jak tashela nan. Etna na anja nama arko nanma ban bari jak mar elanak. Koro nonak ikar don bari jak awa mara.
So Christine just acknowledged our Arunda ancestors in the land in which we're sitting in Alice Springs and Bandwa. Myself, Natasha, and Christine just asked the ancestor spirits to watch over us as we meet today with many viewers, and Sandra and Dr. Nina. So we just ask that we have a good meeting today, being an International Women's Day. Mara.
And also,
thank you, Chris.
Yeah, and also to make us like strong in ourselves too, in our spirit.
Yes.
Yeah, in that way too.
Thank you, Christine, and thank you, Natasha. Well, as we know, today is a very important day. And what we've done is we've been working, Nina and myself, we've been working out in remote communities, working with Minnie, and we've known Minnie for around 4 or 5 years, working with her and her hygiene products. And also Minnie really shared her knowledge with us at a meeting with NATSWA and the University of Queensland. And that's where NATSWA then actually took on the role of working a lot more in hygiene and being a voice for Indigenous women, as well as we work with Share the Dignity to get hygiene bags and products out to the remote communities. So it's excellent that Minnie's here to be able to share her voice and her journey of what she's been doing in the hygiene product. And it's also a privilege to have Christine and Natasha here talking about their journeys and what they've actually had to go through to be able to get to where they are, out in a remote area where, as we know, to get native title and everything, it can be a very battle. But it's also the battle that stands between them and making an economic gain is by looking at how they can promote their business, how to get people out to their business, and the challenges that they have had through COVID to be able to still carry on their tour business. It's been a long journey for the 3 panelists, but as we know, and that's why we're here listening to them today, it's their Choose the Challenge is why they are resilient, why are they strong, why they have very strong spirits, and why they are the voices for us here on our panel. Thank you very much. So if we'd like to talk, there will be if we'd like to now hear from the women. So if Christine and Natasha could share their story.
Sure, thank you, Sandra. Hi everyone, Natasha here, Natasha Abbott. Christine is my sister-in-law. So we live in Alice Springs, we live in Wanmara community, which is 450 k's southwest of Alice Springs. Everyone knows where Yulara is. We're just about 300 kilometers north of Yulara, in between Alice Springs and there. So Christine's family owns the Wanmara community lease area and where we live and where we operate our tourism business. So yeah, we decided to, Christine and my brother Peter decided to do cultural tourism on country. This was an initial idea back in the late 1990s to early 2000s, that they actually thought about how they can build an economic base on remote community. They started by looking at their land and how resourceful they could use the land in which was granted. It's a lease area within the national park, which we are part of the Wararka Kings Canyon National Park area. Christine's lease area is in the southeast boundary of it, just right up against the beautiful George Gill Range. We are a population of just 10 on community, who choose to live on community. And Christine's family group is the Luritja people. My descendant and background is Aranda, Purdam, Southern Aranda, me and my brother, and Christine's is Luritja, is our language groups. With our tourism business, Peter and Christine started to plan and talk about what they thought, or actually wanted to, and feel free to jump in at any time, Mr. Is that they wanted to get off Centrelink. They found the hardship of living on a remote community with the nearest town, like I said, 450 kilometers northeast of us, Alice Springs. So living remote on a Centrelink pay, they found the hardship of living with food, travel, and also just be able to stay on country. So they thought about a campground was the initial idea to run camping, but they also, either side of the community is two big, large accommodation places, Kings Creek Station and also the Kings Canyon Resort. So there was a bit of a challenge of accommodation places, and they sort of thought, well, how come, and they also thought of, and talked to government and talked to the central land councils about, setting up an enterprise on that Wanmara lease boundary where we live. So it found that we had a lot of challenges with that in terms of permits and leasing and, access road into the community through the public and all that. So what they end up doing was to think about doing cultural tourism.
Thought of that with Peter and I thought of that how to do a culture tour. So we just chucked in $50 each into our account and opened it, and from there we just start building it slowly. Very proud to do that. Still happy doing it.
Yes. So we actually ended up registering a company through ASIC. We chose ASIC instead of an ORIC sort of registered business. We felt that was something where we'd like to head into, and running a business was Very hard. It was very challenging. We knew nothing about business, so we just thought we'd just give it a go. We just knew that we were very determined to get off a Centrelink pay, because living really remote, like I said, is really hard with the cost of fuel, food, and travel expenses for appointments to Alice Springs. So the cultural tourism was something we did by earning an income, but also a chance to continue and preserve and maintain our Luritja and Pradam Southern Aranda culture, because we felt that all our loved ones, our elders, were passing away, and we found that no one was continuing on that. So my brother and my sister-in-law thought about we needed to continue on that. So we started a business called Kark. Kark is in the Aranda language. It is the Western bowerbird. That bowerbird is very prominent and around the Central Australia region. He is our logo and a brand for our business. This Western bowerbird is very special to us. It is what we named our business is Kark. We offer a 1-hour cultural tour and experience on both the Luritja and Aranda sharing of cultures to many visitors that travel to the Yulara and surrounding areas. And those that come to the Kings Canyon area get to experience Aboriginal culture through us in our storytelling. So we're very proud that this cultural product is has a high demand. We were very surprised how we experienced in our first year of trading in 2015. So we registered the business in 2014. And in our first trading year of 2015, we received over 742 people that wanted to experience the product or had gone through the experienced the Kark product. And from there, we had a really quite rapid and quick growth in the business. So we've been trading for, this is our 7th year. So we've had like 50 to 100% growth over the years on many visitors coming to experience us. So we found that this was something working for us. We also in 2018, through tourism, we applied for our first Northern Territory Brolga Award, and we actually won it that year in 2018. We were really proud, and we were very honoured to receive the Northern Territory Emerging New Business in cultural tourism. And in 2019, my brother and Christine set a target of the number of visitors they wanted to come experience us, and that was 5,000 visitors from 2015. You can imagine they sat down and sort of looked at, oh, we've got a lot of people coming to see us and we're recording the numbers. Or why don't we sort of have a target to really market ourselves to get 5,000 people come to visit us out of the 160 odd thousand that visit the region of Wairarapa. So we targeted 5,000 people to come to Kark, and we achieved that, and we actually went over that amount in 2019. So that was a very, very high achievement for us.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. And one of the other things I want to ask you, through all these challenges, what do you think, confronting these challenges, how do you think it made a difference for you? And what do you think your future will be to a more exciting outcome? What the challenges has made in a difference to you all at Kark?
There was like many unknown challenges when we thought on operating our cultural tourism on country. you know, there was a lot of challenges of, you know, how do we market ourselves, knowing that the tourism industry was all very new to us. We found it the hard way, and what we don't know what to question or ask the question. So what we had wonderful support through the Northern Territory Trade, Business and Innovation, and also Northern Territory Tourism and the Tourism Central Australia, government bodies that want us operating the business on country. So we had a lot of support and training on how to deliver the product, and also the challenges of stepping away, knowing when to, have we got enough money to get off Centrelink and carry on a wage. That was like a really big challenge for us, and it still is a challenge to, you know, understand the business acronyms when you're running a remote business and connecting to the world in the World Wide Web, and, you know, the many challenges that we don't have, the I suppose the opportunities like regional, where, you know, internet is widely covered. We don't have internet coverage where we operate in the Wairarapa region. So it's just home-based NBN satellite that we do run our business on. But where we operate the business, we have like a small receiver 400 kilometres from our home base in the community living area. And yeah, that's where we operate a remote sort of tap your card if you want to come and experience the car thing. And yeah, so we're attracting dollars to the region. How do we, you know, bring more people to the Wairarapa region from Yulara, because everyone loves to go and view the majestic Yulara Uluru. But how do we bring and attract enough people to where we're operating and want to tell our story through Kark about our beautiful culture? And, you know, we also, how do we attract that? That was a challenge. And how do we get a lot of people coming to us so we can actually generate enough money to survive and have a sustainable business on country? And that was one of the still continued travel challenges. We want to now grow the business in other areas. We're able to support our other family members to come off Centrelink. They are being trained by Peter and Christine on how to deliver our product to the world. And we just feel that it's a challenge where we don't even get like the CDP provider identifying us as a business to come and approach and have those conversations about what do we need to have in plan to help you, support you through your cultural tourism product to get your family members off Centrelink. You know, those conversations never happen, but they're happy to come into the community and record people on being attended there. If they're not there, then they take them off the list, and then they have to wait and reapply to Centrelink. So, you know, there's a lot of challenges in remote Aboriginal businesses where, you know, even having, you know, the knowledge of your money story. We call it money story, but for those, it's the finances. Finances are very challenging when you don't have the literacy, financial literacy around a balance sheet, what's your break even, you know, all that stuff. And also the legal protection of your cultural product. You know, it's all very challenging at first, you know, to protect your IP. We initially ran at the risk of having no IP protection for 5 years, to be honest, and that was a challenge for us. But putting money aside and having control of our finances, we wanted to ensure that we had legal protection. So we achieved that with the wonderful support of our many partners that come to Kark. So yes, and there's a lot of challenges I can talk about, but it'll take over a lot of air time.
Yes, yes, it's you have faced a lot of challenges. And one of the things I know is that, Christine, you talk 4 languages, is that right?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I speak Lorija, mostly Lorija. Aranda. If I see Aranda people, I speak Aranda to them. Pichinjara, I can sort of like really understand what they're saying. It's similar to Lorija. And my mom's language, Majara, which is northern area, North Bella
Yes.
Springs. Yeah.
And I think
Yeah.
that's one of the, keep talking, sorry.
Yeah, I have 4 languages speak. Trying to teach my grandson. Show him, teach him, and he can understand the language. And ask my daughter too, because she don't know anything. She understands, but she don't want to talk. It's more or less like she feels shame. That's not a shame. You should be proud to speak your own language. But yeah, I'm also teaching Peter as well for my language, but we have been for nearly 30 years, so he's really getting it now. So he understands my language, Lorija, but teaching them at the same times too. Yeah. And
Yes, sorry. And one of the other things is that your culture is so very strong, and I've been out there to the tour, and your artwork, can you tell us about your artwork and how that's been passed down and the importance of carrying that as well?
The hard work used to help my great grandmother, looking at her and how she was doing it. She was doing it her way, but explaining and telling. Used to help her chop the wood, make music sticks for her, putting the pattern on the stick, and she explained it what's about. But always about women's stuff in a way, not men's area, but always the woman's side. The patterns, you have to do the right way of doing it, teaching and showing us like that. The dot paintings, I looked at her and I started thinking and using my own ideas into that. Yeah, she was around about 90, 98 or something, really old woman. Really learned from her, but I was but young at the time. She had all the knowledge for this country, for the country. But I was so young to really learn more from her. So I sort of more or less like missed out on that part. Yeah.
And can you just tell us the most important thing, both of you, is why culture and traditional knowledge is so important, and why we must keep maintaining it today, the importance of losing that. Speaking 4 languages, I've been out there and seen your beautiful artwork. I've sat down on the ground and you've told me the history of the land, and I think it's been one of the best tours that I've ever been on. I've been on a lot of tours around this world. But I think when I went out there, I really learned about what my token means, the meaningful language that we really need to understand, not just say, oh, okay, we have a totem, we have dot paintings, but you really explain the history of everything to me. And I really walked away and felt, wow, that was one of the most powerful message that I've had. And I think that, the wisdom that you have out there, both of you, and with your community is really great to share. And I'd like to also say that, I know with Natsuwa, we've been out there working with you. We've been out there twice, and I came out also with Donna, and I'd like to thank Donna Digby from the Northern Territory Business Enterprise, as well as Cassie Lang from Murrowa Law, going out there and helping you. And it's just been a real pleasure. So, thank you very much. And I'd really like to, now we need to pass on to Nina, and Nina can share her story, and Minnie can share their story, and then we'll talk as a group again. Thank you very much, Christine and Natasha.
Vaya.
Thank you, Christine, and thank you, Natasha and Sandra. And I also was able to spend a little bit of time on
Oh,
your
sorry, yes,
late
Christine.
last year.
Yeah.
And really, I'm very excited about your story and the ability to live on country and have a meaningful cultural link. Something before we move to our next guest is we haven't really realised who is chairing today. It's Professor Sandra Creamer, AM. She is the CEO of the National Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Women's Alliance. She's also a professor, an honorary professor of public health at the University of Queensland, and has an Order of Australia for her leadership for Indigenous women. So pretty amazing. And we've got the head of school from public health, Professor Liz Eakin, on the line, who's adding some words about Sandra's contribution to our school as well. So from self-determination and hearing from Natasha and Christine in Alice Springs to far north Queensland to Western Cape, we have Ms. Minnie King on screen. And one of the two most exciting days that I've had ever in my research career, one was getting a phone call from Sandra Creamer, making contact, and then a few weeks later from Minnie King, and both contacting me for a piece of work that I was doing around Indigenous women living in remote areas, and where they've taken me on an educational journey, cultural journey, and an understanding about what it is to live on this land and whose land this is, and how we walk on it and walk together, has been incredible. And I work very closely with Minnie and with Sandra, and Sandra and I felt it would be wonderful to hear from Minnie about the project. So it's very much a public health project, but rather than me spoiling it, we'll go to Minnie. So welcome, Minnie. Can you tell us a little bit about, you know, where you're speaking to us from and which community you're in?
Thanks very much, Nina, and thanks to Sandra for the introduction. Obviously, in these unusual circumstances with technology and Zoom, I have to acknowledge a country upon which I speak today, because my words echo across this country and are carried through to where the other speakers, presenters and audience are based. I therefore acknowledge the Anglith country in Weipa, whose ancestors walked and talked before me, and the traditional owners and elders of the day upon which I live amongst, as well as future generations to come. I'm from the Umai clan, and my family extends throughout the Torres Strait, the Northern Peninsula area and the Western Cape. I've been fortunate to have lived in many remote places around Australia. I started, and I've been in the Indigenous arena for a number of years, in fact, most of my working life. I started with the ATSIC Perth Regional Office back in 1992, and then moved to the Kalgoorlie Regional Office, and then to the Thursday Island Regional Office, which became the Torres Strait Regional Authority as an independent statutory authority back in '94. So I've lived on Thursday Island for 12 years, where my three children were born and raised. And I live with my mother, who was my biggest influence in my life because of her energy, drive and knowledge of culture, and her work ethic have made me who I am today and shaped how I interact with my community and my families. I've been an active member of the community. Education and health have been a significant part of who I am, particularly raising three kids. I've been on a school board on Thursday Island. I've been on a school board in Newman, in the Pilbara, in WA, and I've been on a school board in Perth. Education for me is an absolute given and a key. And coupled with that, obviously, in terms of the health perspective. I live in Weipa, and currently at the moment I run a business, as have the other two speakers. I had that for 6 years. We're a mining contracting company. We're 100% Aboriginal owned and managed, run that with my husband, who's from Napranum, and we've got 60% Indigenous employees, which is a huge thing for us. So I first visited Weipa about 20 years ago, and it was in the red dirt when my son was not even one that he learned to walk. So it's of personal significance to me, this country, and then I've come full circle. So in 2014, I came here with my husband. As I said, he's from Napranum, and this is where we've settled, and we've been ever since. I've also been pleased to make connections with my extended families through the local Aboriginal communities of Napranum, Aurukun and Mapun. So in Napranum, which is a few kilometres south of Weipa, there's about 1,000 people, over 90% of whom are Indigenous. We've got to the north, Mapun, there's 317 people, and then Aurukun, which has got about 1,200 people, so that's further south than Napranum. Weipa's got about 3,800 people, so all up in our Western Cape region, we've got 6,300 people approximately. We're about 800 kilometres from the nearest city of Cairns, and about 2,500 kilometres from Brisbane. So remoteness for us is a way of life, and it's what we knew and know, and it's what we live each day. Our community is, like most others, remote communities, are very diverse, and the percentage of Indigenous people is proportionally higher than non-Indigenous people. So for me, it's home and it's familiar and I'm comfortable. There are 11 traditional owner groups here, and this country here is where bauxite is mined. So bauxite in turn is turned into aluminium, and they've been mining here for over 50 years. So most people who live here currently, it's what they know. It's more just an interesting fact. It's more than likely that the mobile phone that each of you have, or a can of Coke that you may drink, has probably got aluminium that originates from this country. So in some respects, we are connected, even, in an industrial sense, I suppose. We might have a Woolworths here, and we've got a hospital and we've got schools, but we're still remote in the fact that last year, for example, when COVID-19 was really hurting our country, we had a biosecurity lockdown for 3.5 months. So what that meant was either getting in to go and see family in the community of Napranum. We had to have, it was heavily restricted, and there was a police roadblock. So we had to have identity checks, and we had to fill out online a reason for entry into the community. So the impacts of that were felt very, strongly in the region that we live in. And I suppose the thing is the worry and the concern that if COVID got hold, it would decimate our communities. So, you get a real sense of how fragile our Indigenous communities are when you have a mandated lockdown with biosecurity laws that are there to protect the most vulnerable, which in this instance is our people and our families. Our community, remote community, is like any other. We face challenges due to the tyranny of distance, but as women, as Indigenous women, and then as remote Indigenous women, it provides these additional layers of complexity that have to be acknowledged. And we represent, from my perspective anyway, the Indigenous difference. So our norms, for example, are not the same as non-Indigenous people. Our family structures, our culture and traditional observations, they dictate how we interact, and they are distinctly different to others, and we're fully aware of that. There's obviously some erosion of culture, but our core value systems remain as they have been within the living memory of some. Unfortunately, they're recorded through songs, stories, dance, and through landmarks on country. However, in my view, the onus of responsibility rests with each of us in these remote communities to remain cognizant of the struggles and the pain of our sisters and mothers and our grandmothers before us as they fought for the rights to a more equal world. And particularly I do use this motivation to instill cultural values and teachings that carry meaning and relevance in today's society.
That's an amazing opening, Minnie, and the audience is probably wondering where we're going to go now because there are so many challenges and you bring such incredible experience and connection into a variety of communities. There's one particular aspect that you've been working on not in your business, but in your role as a community member for several years that I've been honoured to be involved in and come to visit you and your community, and Sandra's given us leadership through NatSiWA as well. So can you tell us about the challenge that you've been working with young women and girls?
Yeah, absolutely. And look, today is International Women's Day, and I think the tide of change is upon us. And in terms of women around the world sharing stories, I'm no different to that. So I'd like to share a personal story in terms of how we got to that challenge. So if you could bear with me for a little bit. So 3 years ago, I travelled from Weipa in my remote community to Brisbane to undertake breast cancer treatment for stage 4 advanced breast cancer. At the time, I was completely absorbed with righting a wrong. So the wrong for me, for people from women from my remote community, is that I couldn't access a mammogram because I lived outside of the Brisbane area. I had to fight tooth and nail to get a mammogram. And it was interesting because the only reason that they gave me one is because we were renting a house for our children to attend university and do apprenticeships in Brisbane. So I promised myself that I would change this for other women in Queensland. So no matter where they lived, if they felt a lump or they felt unwell, anything to do with their breast, that they could access a mammogram regardless of their postcode. I was going to do that after I finished my treatment. However, as fate would have it, I was reading an article on ABC News about a university study by the University of Queensland about remote water in Central Australia. The interesting thing about this study is that while the university researchers were there looking at water in Central Australia, the issue of menstrual hygiene and sanitary access to sanitary items came up. It's when I read this, I thought immediately of my daughters and the daughters of my sisters living in the Western Cape that experienced the same thing. So with encouragement from my eldest daughter, I told her I was going to ring the university research and let her know how excited I was about the research. And I just remember my daughter at the time saying, do it, Mum. And so I did. I made that call and I expressed to the university researcher how happy I was to finally read something about remote women and the challenge of menstrual hygiene and how the subject that some view as sensitive or not to be talked about in public arena was finally out there. Fortunately for me, the university researcher was equally excited, and because I was in Brisbane, she agreed to meet with me along with another researcher on the University of Queensland campus. I chose a day when I was feeling okay and I drove to the university and met with them. I had to tell them I was unwell, but I was really hoping that they would focus on how keen I was about exploring this type of work up in the Western Cape. And they were very generous with their time and let me express my feelings about what we might do together in this space. So they actually agreed at the end of that meeting, subject to all, obviously, the background work in the community, that we agreed we'd work with the local high school, so the Western Cape College. That university researcher is you, Nina, so I must thank you personally for believing in me to go on this journey. You know, and the other thing, Nina, is that you, as a non-Indigenous woman, you agreed to be guided culturally and to walk together in my community so that we could have a coordinated approach that was culturally sensitive in every aspect. Obviously, I have no idea that any of this would get off the ground, and I had my work cut out for me. But during my treatment in Brisbane over 8 months, I made lots of inquiries back home, and that basically, so when I returned, that was the start of something to put the wheels in motion. We did this study because firstly, it was important to me and I was able to relate to the issue. And my assumption was that if it was important to me, it would be important to the many other women and girls in my community. I'm a big believer in knowledge and the model of lifelong learning, so there's no question about the need to do this. I always had faith and belief in my community that they would be receptive and accepting of the study. So if there was any other topic, it would have been maybe easier or lighthearted, but this was a challenge because it is, and sometimes in some cases traditionally is still taboo. So for the subjects of periods, but for me and my personal experience, for my mother, although it was private, she did talk about it. So how could that be wrong, right? My mother thought it was okay. Plus the idea that no one had done this type of work in this field was appealing because of what the application across other remote communities might be to be able to bring to light their situation in terms of menstruation and their periods and the different things that inhibit women from coming forward and speaking about it. So we had support from the Western Cape College and the principal, so that's the local primary school and high school here, and they were willing for us to let us into his school and interact with the students. We also had support from the parents, from every parent and carer, who signed a note to say we're allowed to have their child attend sessions in their school. It was an extremely involved process. It required all sorts of negotiating backwards and forwards, including, most importantly, with the Queensland Education Department with ethical approvals. But I'm sure my previous working life and negotiation skills allowed us to understand what they needed to be able to see and read. So we framed our proposals really carefully with Nina, and I think I never thought it wouldn't happen. Part of the challenge was to remain committed and positive. But once I made that decision for the first phone call to Nina at the University of Queensland to engage my community, we just knew that we had to gain traction, and the study would, might lead us to, I have to give this a go, I have to try, but also be flexible and culturally appropriate in our approach. So the University of Queensland did a number of visits over a 2-year period. Starting in 2018, we started this study. We secured donations for sanitary items from Share the Dignity and for the school and community groups. We also secured a sanitary pad vending machine from Share the Dignity, and that was installed in the local high school, the local boarding college for Indigenous students across Torres Strait and the Cape. And then in January, we finally released the paper called Dignity Every Day, and here we are today talking about it. So the challenge was to ask the question about getting your period, what you know about it, how does it make you feel, and what are the barriers? And the answers that the women and the girls provided from the community were then formulated into a study, and we could see a pattern of the issues and start to quantify these. So with the University of Queensland researchers and myself, we also learnt a great deal along the way. So it was definitely a two-way learning street. So if living remotely is a challenge, then asking women and girls to share with us their personal experiences with getting their periods was a long overdue question that was received with a great sense of relief. I found that finally someone is interested in how this affects me and my daughters and my mothers and my aunties. So the challenge became a gift of knowledge because of my community's openness and desire to contribute and learn.
That's amazing, Minnie, to bring our story together, our long story into that telling. Thank you so much. And it's lovely hearing the family connections as well as community as well as professional, because I think that's something I've definitely learned about working in Indigenous health and with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, is that there is no division between these different levels. We're all here taking the journey as humans, doing our best. And I can even see on the participant list some very special family members who are also joining. So it continues. We don't have too much time left on the call. So I just encourage attendees who'd like to ask questions to type them ideally into the Q&A part of the screen, and we'll answer those. But before we take the focus off you, Minnie, you did outline some of the challenges we had along the way. But do you want to share some of the exciting outcomes as well?
I will, and just quickly, just for the benefit of others who want to be able to participate and ask questions. So there are many exciting outcomes for the women and girls in our community in terms of their human right to experience the dignity every day, which is the theme of our project with their periods. If I could just share, the single biggest surprising yet exciting outcome actually came from the men in our community. So what happened was all the introductory phone calls and emails, as I said, were done out of Brisbane. And then when I came back home, I actually said to my husband, I've got a bit of trepidation here with the high school principal. He's a male, and I think he's probably as tall as you, and I might need some help trying to, break down this barrier. Can you come with me? So that meeting, that initial face-to-face visual, you know, putting a name to a face was really, really, really important. And fortunately, my husband was fully supportive of this. He didn't want to know the ins and outs, but he knew generally in terms of what the research was about. So that first meeting, when we agreed the principal and walked to the meeting room, and he started to say to us, oh, this is the, you know, such and such building and over here. And then my husband, who's from Napranum, turned around and said, yes, this is the old basketball court we used to play on, and this is where the library. And the principal said, oh, so you used to go to this school? He said, yes, many years ago. So that connection was actually critical, because out of the meeting that came from that, we actually got approval to get access to the students. So to husband, big tick, thank you very much. In the first year of our study, we actually targeted year 9 to 12. So in conjunction and coordination with the school, year 9 to 12 female students. One of the exciting outcomes that came from this was the school was so interested and keen for us to continue on our study. We were invited back for a second year. So we thought we'd test the waters and put to the principal that perhaps we could extend the field to year 5 girls up to year 12. And also, how about boys? Because we saw a knowledge gap there from boys. So they agreed for boys year to 10. So it went from a small project, as the other speakers were talking today, in terms of their business. You start small, you work really hard, but a lot of the groundwork that University of Queensland, you know, assisted me on the ground was critical for us to actually expand the study. So to have boys included was absolutely amazing. To cut down the cultural barriers in relation to that, we discussed that at length, and we decided that it was inappropriate for me, because I was related to a number of those boys, to step back from those sessions and be nominated. And we approached a traditional owner, Ernie, who we're very grateful for. So thank you very much, Ernie. And he agreed to attend those sessions as the Indigenous liaison person in lieu of me attending. So that was another male's involvement. But obviously the breaking down the barriers in terms of this, you know, subject has been an extremely important thing. The female students designed a pamphlet. Out of it, we're looking at designing an app. But if I could just share with you, it came from the principal, and it was in the, you know, when we sat down with him and said, okay, what are the takeaways from this? And this is our study after we concluded our study. And he said these really two amazing things which actually floored us. He said, I wanted to let you know that for all the consent forms that went out to parents and carers, I got not one person or one parent or one carer who disagreed, who didn't want this to go forward. So that for us was an indication that parents were conducive to the idea of their students being exposed to this type of discussion. And finally, that he said that what we have done with the University of Queensland and delivered over the past 2 years is a premium product. And we were invited to continue to be involved and work with the school. So that for us is confirmation of everything that we put into this, that the school really valued the work that we did. But without the community, without those women, without those girls, without those boys, without those men, it couldn't have happened. So we're extremely grateful and excited for what might happen in the future.
Thank you, Minnie. And it's such a lovely reflection on how partnership is really the only way to go, to make sure we all travel together.
Yeah.
We don't have many questions asked yet online, but I'll pass back to Sandra to call for questions and then wrap it up.
Yes, if you've got any questions, just please share it with us. But I'd also like to just add to this conversation. Nina, I forgot to thank you very much, because you've pulled all this together, and you're actually the one who's brought us all together. It was through your article that I contacted you, then we met Minnie, and then you brought the NATSUA team together, as well as you've come with us out to the Northern Territory, out to meet Christine and to meet Natasha, and also, you know, to meet up with Donna, who also pulls us together out in Alice Springs. But I think one of the things is, that's what International Women's Day is about, and the theme, you know, challenge to choose. It's all of us walking this journey together and sharing knowledge and wisdom and encouraging each other when we do have these challenges. And I've always said to Nina, and Nina, you know, has really played a part in getting all our information out in articles and into the academic world where it's really important. But one thing I must say is that, Nina, I've always said to this, that, you know, you're really the hands that write our voices and the issues that we've actually had when it comes to remote communities, water security, when it comes to hygiene, and it comes to how you can collect that information and be our voice, because we need to, the issues that we actually have, our women need to be talking, and their words need to be written down in their words. It does not always come from researching articles after articles, but a lot of this knowledge and a lot of the words that we share together is about sharing from our women's voices, because as Natasha and Minnie and Christine, they're out in remote areas. But by putting articles together, you coming out with us, visiting communities and working with us, and also with the support of the University of Queensland, you know, I know myself, and for our NATSWA team and all our directors and other women who you've worked with, is that we really appreciate the work that you've done. And I know with NATSWA, we've really tried to, you know, we're about working with women. We're about raising the voices of our women, and in particular voices out in remote communities. So, you know, I just like to say thank you very much. And it's just really been really honour here today to listen to our women, to hear the voices from the remote communities, to hear your challenges, you know, for you to make a future of this for our children and for our grandchildren and for their grandchildren and for the many generations, by being a voice, by looking at what our human rights are as Indigenous women in this country, about keeping our culture, keeping our family circles, for people to understand why the meaning of language is important. As Christine said, speaking 4 languages, still carrying that on today. You know, we've been here since time begun, and you know, proof is in the pudding from what Christine and Natasha are doing right out in their community. They've lived there from generation to generation to generation. And it's important that we understand, you know, our culture, our ways. And as Minnie shared her story as well, about her circle, about how it is and how the family line is for us, where we have a strong protocols of how we work within our family circles and in our communities. And Minnie shared that with us, and about also the remoteness of how our hygiene and how, you know, period is not ever talked about amongst us. And now it's becoming a conversation, and a very important conversation that we need to have today with our girls, and especially in communities, so that we can make sure that they have a safe way of dealing with when they had their periods or anything like that. And like I said, it's really an honour, Nina, for you to bring us all to here. And I just want to say also, if you're looking for artwork or you want to buy any artefacts or anything, please look at Christine and Natasha's website and go and have a look at the beautiful work that they do out in their communities. And it's about supporting Indigenous businesses out in remote communities. So thank you all very much, and I'll hand it back to any one of you if you'd like to all quickly say a closing statement from Christine, Natasha and Minnie. I'd appreciate that very much.
Paya, I just think, well, for those that we're saying paya is in the Luritja language, is meaning multiple positive, lovely words. Paya, P-A-L-Y-A, is Christine's language. It means yes, good, great, nice, lovely, wonderful, okay. One word, paya.
And welcome.
And welcome. On behalf of Christine, Sandra, Dr. Nina, and Minnie, lovely to meet you, and thank you for sharing your story. We thank the opportunity for NATSIWA to invite us to the International Women's Day, and through Donna Digby, who is our lovely lady that supports us on country. We'd like to thank you for allowing us to share our story and our journey. Our journey is still continuing. We are in it in the long term, and yeah, we love what we do, and just love that we're able to share our story to our visitors and the visitors that would love to come and share and learn about the Lurisha and Pradam Southern Aranda people of Central Australia. When you look on the Australia Aboriginal language map, we are only 2 Aboriginal languages in a number of 170 or 90 plus Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander language groups. So we're just 2 sharing our knowledge of Australia to those visitors who want to come and learn about our culture and the many cultures that we have around the country and in our islands. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
If I can just add to that, to the sisters there, Christine and Natasha and NT, thank you. Very nice to meet you too and listen to your story with your business, and always here if you need anything or any help or just want to chat, because obviously we share that. And even though it's different, I mean, business, I understand you, I get that. And yeah, happy to share. And to Natsiwa and to UQ, Nina, and to Sandra, thank you so much for inviting us. I'm really humbled to speak. And just if I can finish, in terms of the human rights and human rights of females, today is a really, really important day. There's so many topical issues circulating at the moment for women around the world, whether it's the Me Too movement or Black Lives Matter or the discussion of sexual violence against women. From me personally, my perspective, we see this, we hear this, and imparting knowledge is a great thing, but having people listen and turn into action is just as important. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Nina?
I just wanted to thank everyone for coming, and that phrase that Sandra used about what's the role for non-Indigenous people. From her perspective, it's to be the hands that can write the story to get it to the right audience for advocacy for better lives, in this case, for better lives for women on International Women's Day. I'd also probably add in ears are very important, and learning to listen is actually a huge skill that I am still in the middle of developing, but being able to sit and listen and hear. And you know what we've heard from Minnie and Christine and Natasha, there are stories and there's knowledge, and there is a way to work in partnership, and hearing those stories from community that are making changes not just locally but have so many benefits to be shared broadly to other communities, to regional, to urban settings, and what we've achieved by talking to girls and boys around menstruation and puberty and bodily change, and how that could change their health journey in many ways, as well as their confidence in themselves and in the choices that they're making for better health. That has ramifications long-term through their lives. So to be able to do that in a culturally appropriate way with the right partners has been an amazing journey, and hoping to work on that longer term with Minnie. So when we've just hit time, a recording will be sent to everybody who's registered and attendees and registrants, as well as links to the report that Minnie mentioned, and we'll send again the CARC website, beautiful website. There's an amazing video on there too. You'll hear more Luritja language from Christine, and links to the Natsiwa website. Thanks, Sandra.
Thank you. Thank you. Christine, can you just close in language? Thanks.
Yep, I can do that. Awa marar kujmat orgam rangarakle lam. Awa maranda rangarakle ngam. Learneram rangarakle and mar anma rangaranarajak. What I'm saying is very good to working with women's, very good, understanding side. Yeah, that's in what I'm talking in Aranda is Western Aranda, but Eastern Aranda is different, so I'm using a Western Aranda language, our Mara. Mara means like Paya. Same thing, yeah. Vaya.
Thank you very much. And thank you everybody for coming on. We really appreciate this, and we'll actually send the link out to all those who have registered. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Vaya, vaya. I mean,
Thank you.
Mara. Mara in our country, Mara.
Thank you.